So, Emma, what's happening today?
So, today we're having a guest, which is my sister Becky, and we're discussing French parenting.
This episode is called French Parenting. Welcome once again to the Crippen House. It's actually evening this time that we're recording.
Actually
impressive.
nice.
We're actually telling the truth. Welcome to the Blanket Fort, and it's time to unwind and chat about our experiences of parenting. And that's what this special episode is all about, sharing experiences, and particularly your experiences alongside your sister Becky's experiences, who lives in France.
Yeah.
I'm Elliot, the one that's not going to feature very much in this episode.
And I'm Emma, the one who is going to feature in this episode.
Yeah, very good. So I'm going to disappear off, and you get to listen to Becky and Emma chat away.
So a rather rambly chat.
There's no one to guide them, so
No.
they just go for it.
We go off on various tangents. If anything, this episode should be called Another Tangent. ...
I think people are used to that by now with our conversation, so it's no different to normal. Parenting achievement time.
Boop, 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 boop.
Ba-bing. Well, recently I had an experience which I'll share. I don't know why these things always happen to me. It's what I don't know. But because we've got Becky staying with us, which is why you're going to be listening to their conversation. We're actually in the same location.
I know, it's
It
crazy.
only happens a couple of times a year.
Yeah, normally Christmas and summer holidays.
Yeah, so we thought we'd grab a few spare moments to record something with her. So as such, we've been doing a few things this week. I mean, depends when you're listening to it, but it's currently the summer holidays.
Yeah.
And so we went out on an afternoon to go have some tea in town in Harrogate, where we live. Of course, Lily doesn't always do well going out on a afternoon evening, so we should have maybe predicted it. But, we're parenting achievement. We just ignored that and broke with the routine, which is always a big no-no.
But that should be fine.
It's
She
a
did a
holiday.
nap she doesn't normally have either, so
So we took her out, and she wasn't happy. She was kicking off and getting grumpy and tired and all that good stuff. So I opted to take her home.
very kindly, he was like, I'll go, I'll take her home.
I'll take her home. And just as I was leaving...
I just want to say in tangent to your story, Becky finds it hilarious because I literally said after you left, I hope this thing doesn't happen, because it's often what Lily does in protest.
Yeah. So as I left, my burger and chips arrived, so I missed that in passing.
That was sad.
I carried Lily out, she was kicking off big time, and she's a toddler now, so really has the ability to kind of claw at you and, it feels like sometimes you're walking along and people are looking at you like you're kidnapping a child. But I try not to think of that, and I was carrying her home. She refused to get on the bus to go home because she knew that would mean, she just kept saying to me, Mama, Mama, and she was trying to get back.
Yeah.
I felt terrible, but I was like, you'll be happy once we're home because we can relax, we can lay out, and, it'll be much better. So I valiantly struggled on, walking home. It's like, I think it's probably like a couple of miles from the centre all the way back home.
Half an hour with a Lily at least.
Yeah. If she'd got on the bus, it would have been fine.
Yeah, 10 minutes.
Yeah. And then she, in protest, peed on me as I was carrying her. And I only noticed when I looked down and my whole trouser leg was dark and wet. And then I noticed that my jumper, there was a big wet patch spreading. And I was like, oh dear. So I walked home with a kind of half of me covered in wee. And it was a lovely trip home, lovely trip out. I had such a lovely time.
To be like, how's it going? He's like, I've been weed on.
Weed on.
Yeah.
I'm hungry.
I've
had to walk home.
Yeah.
It's going so well.
And I was just sending like, I'm so sorry.
Anyway, that's our parenting achievement. Those moments where we've all been there, and you just want to kind of share it and show that,
It was an achievement, though. You made it home.
I made it home. That's the achievement. And, we're not always great with our parenting. It always goes wrong at some point. Yeah. If you have a parenting achievement, let us know. And let's crack on with the episode.
Let's get into it. Today we have a very special guest, Mrs. Madam Bunny, which is my sister Becky.
Well, not just your sister, your quadruplet sister.
Identical quadruplet sister. For those who don't know, she lives in France, although you probably do if you've listened to us before this point, because I constantly go, one of my sisters who lives in France, and that is she. We were worried we were actually going to sound quite similar.
We've had to listen to our voices to make sure that we don't sound so alike.
But it turns out, I don't think we do.
Currently, we do not sound too alike.
When he played it back?
We can differentiate between the two voices.
You can't tell. Once again,
it's not that Emma's an egomaniac and talks to herself.
We thought it sounded like I'd just gone crazy and having a conversation.
There is actually someone else.
But if I was really crazy, I'd say that anyway.
Yeah. What's funny is I normally listen to these podcasts, so it's interesting. I feel quite excited to be part of one.
Oh.
It's like a fan.
It's like, I gotta be part of it. Yeah, but it's not that I force her to watch it.
So of my own free will, I promise. Is that okay?
It's okay. Well done. You've said you enjoy it.
My experience might not be the same as everyone's experience who have children in France, because of course it really you can have like micro cultures within a culture.
Definitely. I'd like to echo this. If you go, I had a very different experience, and I also live in England. Yeah, I'm just speaking from my experience in my area.
From my experience of France, and
I think there is generality that we can make about.
Yeah, especially the Paris region. Yeah, I think, because I do work with. I actually work in a nursery with young children in Paris, so it's not just my experience as a parent; it's also my experience working with very young children. Mm. So I think I can generalise, perhaps, especially about that region. But I didn't, just in case some French person gets into the comments and says, it's not true, I hated parenting in France or something like this, or the opposite, like, it's really good, it's really and I think what you criticise was, of course it's through my perspective, so
that's what we always say at the start of the podcast.
Disclaimer.
You are welcome to disagree. We do not know everything. Any comment or interaction is good comment or interaction. You can say you hate it, you can say we're stupid, fine.
Yeah. So anyway, we were going to start with from
the very
Are we going to do
beginning.
from pregnancy?
Let's do from pregnancy.
Okay, so right
I think
at the beginning.
It will annoy a lot of English people because we'll quickly see that the French system is very different in a good way.
We'll try and do this fast so that it doesn't upset too many people.
And also, if we were to do every single detail, we'd be here for hours.
But basically, I felt like, because I had my first child was born in England and my pregnancy was followed in England. Even though I was living in France at the time, I just was a bit nervous. It was my first pregnancy, it was my first birth, and I thought,
you wanted to be at home.
Yeah, even though I speak fluent French, I was paranoid that, maybe, when I'm in pain, I can't communicate properly or whatever. And so my first birth, it was a first birth as well, it was very different. But I can honestly say it was a really bad birth generally, and I didn't feel particularly supported by the healthcare professionals around me. Not that they did a bad job or they were neglectful, but just I didn't feel particularly supported at all. And it was very much a case of, you've had your baby, according to them, there was nothing majorly wrong, so I didn't even stay one night in hospital. Even though I had a 3rd-degree tear, I went home within hours of giving birth.
I think this also speaks because at that time you were down in Plymouth.
Yeah.
And I think their hospital has a far bigger turnaround than some others.
Yeah, definitely.
Because in Harrogate, I was kept in for 3 days.
We were a C-section.
Yeah.
Well, I was saying, whereas my to jump quickly, just in terms of time in France, my birth actually was a lot easier because it was a second birth, and I had to stay in hospital for a week.
Yeah, it's mandatory.
Minimum. And that's everyone. That's not C-section, not C, whatever. They like to make sure that you and the baby are doing well for a whole week before you go home. And they're very much into like, well, this is your time to relax. So even though of course you're feeding a baby, but they're like, you need to stay in a space where you're supported. And I was explaining to Emma, like,
let's just depend, like, so on, like, in the rooms, she has her own room in France.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm going to say generally everyone does, unless you're in a hospital where there really is it's overcrowded. Then you might have one person share your room, or for example, on the neonatal wards where the babies are very, very sick, you might have 2 to a room, just because of the monitoring and stuff like this. But everyone who I know has had their own room, and they even had their own room for the whole birth process. There was never a point when I shared a ward with anyone.
Whereas as my English listeners will know, that's a very different experience. So when I started giving birth, because I was induced, I was in a room with 2 other people. Not like my husband, like 2 other patients who were also being induced. And you have a curtain for your privacy. And then for the actual labour before I had my C-section, I was put in a private room. And then after that, I was sharing a room with like 8 people, I think.
Oh, wow, that's a lot. Because then if your baby cries, every other baby wakes up.
I got no sleep for like 3 days.
Yeah.
And we had one bathroom. So
with my first, I never experienced that because we were out of hospital so fast that I never had to actually share a ward very much. I did share
a bathroom.
Yeah. No. Oh yeah, I didn't think of that. That must have been really... So we had our own room.
She had a balcony.
I had my own bathroom and my own shower, so there was... And this is all free, pretty much. Like, it's covered by your... If you're employed, you have your insurance through work, but it's mostly your employer that pays you.
Yeah, so it's different in France. Your employer has to insure you, basically.
Yeah, they have to insure you, and the government pays... So the employer pays about 80%, the government pays 20%. But basically, you're never out of pocket. You're never sent a bill or anything like this. It's all covered. And so you do get certain facilities that are just a lot better.
Because we gave birth at some, a few months apart.
And we were both during COVID as well, so that added another aspect to it, yeah.
But it basically made me very envious when she was like, here's my room, and here's my shower, and here's my little balcony I can sit on.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, how lovely. I don't even have a window in my little section.
What they mentioned to me was they said, I remember talking to some of the midwives and stuff, and they said in France birth is very, very medicalised. Which means they are very anti-home birth, all this kind of thing. Which some people, it wouldn't agree with most people, I think. Well, not most people. Some people, I think they want the freedom to be able to be at home. They very much like it to be in a controlled environment, and they're very pro-drug birth. So when they found out with my first I didn't have an epidural, they were really shocked. And they were like, why... They couldn't. They were like, but this time you'll want one, and I said yes because
you're not paying last time.
Personally, I struggled very much, and it was funny because in England they'd been very the opposite, as in, are you sure? Like, because I'd actually thought about having an epidural, and in England they'd been very much like, well, it's only if you really need it, and these are the risks.
I think over here, like hypnobirthing and stuff is actually very popular, so we kind of, I mean. I really enjoyed my epidural, not gonna lie. I've been in pain for a long time when I got given that. But I think over here it is less, I wouldn't say it's like less supported, it's just not, it's almost not in fashion at the minute.
Yeah,
like a lot more people are into more natural things.
But I suspect this is a money thing, because I think if everyone had an epidural, it costs more money.
Yeah,
if everyone just struggles through and has gas now or whatever.
But some people like to feel the pain because they think it helps them push.
Yes, yeah, this is true. So it depends, each person's different. But they're definitely, in France, they were definitely pro-epidural, and they were definitely, like, I had to meet with the...
anesthesiologist?
That's the one. Anesthesiologist or whatever they're called. I
feel like I made up a word that was quite good.
Yeah, it's called something else. But I don't, in French as well, I forget the name when I talk to someone French. Anaesthetist or something.
Oh, yes, that's it. I think my word sounded more elaborate.
I had to meet them with them, I think 2 months before my due date, because they were so sure that each person would have an epidural, and they want to check that your weight, height.
Yeah.
They, for some reason, they check your teeth, your spine, to make sure there's no reason that an epidural would fail. And I thought that was, although I was like presumptive, I thought actually it's very, very thorough.
Yeah.
Because they don't want anything to go wrong the day of. They like everything to be ready, basically.
Whereas I can say in England with my epidural, I didn't have anything checked.
Because I don't know.
They don't have the time.
Yeah, I suppose because especially yours was an emergency C-section, so I think it would have been reassuring to know they had those
Yes,
details.
I had to sign a piece of paper basically being like, if anything happens, I've agreed to have this procedure.
Well, this is what they said when I was in Plymouth, and I'd questioned them about that. They said, oh, well, you have to sign basically like a waiver type thing saying, you know, if something goes wrong, you'd understand that's a risk, basically. And in France, I wasn't asked to sign anything, I don't think.
No. But I think it's hard as well, because at that point I was like, well, yeah, I want her out of me. I will sign anything you put in front of me, because I've been in labour for hours.
Anyway, so that's basically the difference between the...
Yeah. So basically, if you're in England, it makes me feel like that's what I would get at a private hospital here, is my own room and things.
I've got to say, I get that they want to monitor you closely in France, but I do think I started to feel a little bit like a prisoner in a very socialist prison.
Oh, she did.
By the end of
she was at the end of it, she was going, why do I have to be here a week?
I want to go home. And I think maybe for some people, especially when you have older children, you might prefer to leave home, like to leave
and I think
go home
maybe because you've done it before, you were like, I feel like my child's well, I feel like they're feeding well.
Yeah, and it depends on each case, I guess. Yeah. But I mean, I just think, I know some people, I certainly think I would have preferred to go home slightly earlier. I think, because I felt confident, I guess. I think a week maybe, when it's your first, especially when you need that support, because they're so meticulous. They wrote down how many times they'd observed me bathing them to make sure that I knew the protocol of how to do it.
This is another different thing. We don't bathe them, so we're told not to till the umbilical cord falls off.
Yeah, and you don't wash the umbilical cord here, whereas in France
we're not allowed to touch
we're shown how to wash it, and we have to. They really encourage us because they have to tick off. They've seen that we can do it, and it's.
So I mean that's complete.
And we've been educated how to do it.
For both being European countries, that's a completely different set of advice.
Yeah. And it's the same with like everything, like breastfeeding and everything. They have people who come in.
We have people who come in, advise you.
Yeah, exactly, and they advise you. And I had a really nice breastfeeding consultant who spent, I think, about 20 minutes with me the first 3 days, like each day, just to go through like, how are you feeling? How's it going? Whatever, and like giving me tips, or maybe this position would be slightly better, or whether.
Yeah, I think it really depends who you get, because some of them I got were really helpful, and one woman was like, well, it's just natural, and I was like, well, it isn't coming naturally to me. So I would like more tips. But some of them were really thorough and helpful.
Yeah, and I think as well, as long as there's no pressure to breastfeed, I think that's the important thing, because I don't think you should be forced. But anyway, that's the whole other topic.
We actually should cover that in a podcast at a separate point, I think.
Yeah.
Another topic.
That would be very good. Slightly controversial, but it would be good.
Yeah.
Because it'd be interesting to hear different people's opinions. But anyway, so that was the kind of birth experience. Toddlers, how... Because I was thinking the main difference between France and England is that in France, children start school at 2.5, 3.
Yeah.
And your maternity leave is very, very short. So maternity leave, on average, for your first child is 3 months. And it gets more with each child.
Because they want you to have more children.
Because it's a motivation to have more children, really. And they say, well, you have 2 children at home plus the new child, for example. So
that kind of makes sense. You've more stuff going on.
Yeah, so you have longer with each child off, basically. But so most children will go to a nanny or a creche when they're 3 months old. That's
very early
in
for England.
The Paris region. Definitely, that's the norm, because you have to go back to work, and they're encouraged. They're very encouraged, but also the majority of those fees are paid by the government.
Yeah, so they encourage you to go back into work by paying for them to go.
Yeah, exactly. So they really want you to go back to work. That's really encouraged. And they don't want childcare to be a burden on you either. So that's heavily like reimbursed by the government. Like we pay maybe, for my youngest, he is nannies. Now he goes full time because I've started going back to work pretty much full time, and we pay maybe 20% of the whole cost, and the government pays the rest because it's an incentive for the mother to go back to work.
I think our government's trying to follow that. They just haven't. It hasn't happened.
I think
yet.
it's that the system has to be in place, and you have to have enough space. So, for example, they really are into like hiring professionals to do with childcare, making sure they have enough. Because I know in Paris that's a big problem. We actually don't have enough creches.
Well, I think it's a problem in England, actually.
So,
there's a lot of people who... I know it's quite competitive around here. I had to sign Lily up for nursery before she was born.
Yeah, so if it's a public... Because at private creches, they have a few spaces normally. In a public creche in Paris, you have to sign up when you're 3 months pregnant.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't even know they're pregnant at that point. But if you want a place for definite, you have to sign up then.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very competitive. But as I said, I work in a private creche and we have spaces kind of throughout the year occasionally. So it depends on the thing. So that's a big difference because you already kind of are parenting within a larger community than just your husband and wife, for example. So you're already trying to adapt to a routine that's maybe not one you would have chosen particularly, which I think is very different.
A lot of people thought that we sent Lily quite early when she was 1 to nursery, because over here it's not really done till they're 2 or 3. And most people it's 3 because that's when you get some of it paid for of your own work.
And they'd already be in school in France.
Exactly. So this is why it's very different. Yeah. So I remember I found it really weird when people kept saying, "Oh, but she's so young." Yeah. And in my head, because obviously I knew Nassim had been in very early, I was like, it's not that young.
Yeah. The norm is
she's 1.
I think as well I should clarify that. So at 2.5, 3, depending on your birthday falls, you'll start school, but it's not like
sitting and writing.
Yeah, it's very much learning through play still. But basically, it's obligatory now. It's not something that you have unless you have a very good reason to homeschool. It's generally... You're cold?
Yeah.
You're going to cover?
Sorry, I've run over to get a cover. I can get you one if you want.
No, it's okay. Yeah, so now that's obligatory. So now you have to, because they are trying to make sure that everyone has a similar level of education. So
that makes sense, but it's rather strict, isn't it?
It's very strict. So this is recent. Macron actually changed this. So this wasn't... Before it was obligatory from 4.5, 5, which is similar to the UK. And I think when my eldest was about to go into school, he would have gone anyway because it was cheap. It was free childcare.
and you needed it.
And we needed it. So he would have gone anyway, but they changed it the year after he started. So like with our next one, we wouldn't have a choice. But we would have sent them anyway because for us it was very important that they... Because we speak English at home, well, actually we speak English and my husband's Moroccan, so we speak English, Arabic at home. It was important for us that they were exposed to French very early so they could integrate well. So we would have done that anyway. But it's interesting to see how grown up they seem compared to other children of that age in England because they haven't been exposed to different environments, different children.
Well, I was saying this to Becky earlier today. Her son Nassim, I was having like some conversations with him and he's so grown up about some topics. It's kind of crazy the things he can like say and think about, and it's very deep, like in very, very deep conversations.
Yeah, that might just be him because he's very sensitive. But I think I think it exposes them to a bigger world, I guess, than just them. But people, that could be a good or a bad thing.
Well, yes, I would say it's probably the independent English person in me that goes, but I like having the choice.
Yeah.
And I really... I know, obviously, me and Elliot both work full-time, so we don't have the luxury to not have our own childcare. But I do like the days I get with her.
Yeah.
I really value them.
Yeah, that's what I enjoyed, actually, about COVID, where I spent a lot of time with Nassim, my eldest, because we could spend... But I think that's as well how you handle it.
Yeah.
And so... For example, with my youngest, I actually found that he got into a really good routine with his nanny. And I was very grateful because I had found it hard to get him into a routine. And actually, because he was in a different environment and with other children, he kind of just followed their lead in terms of routine.
They do that, yeah.
This is one thing that I think is negative about France is, in my experience, from my perspective, I think if you're a child that doesn't fit in the box, you don't fit in the mould, you will not do well in France or in my region specifically.
Well, I think it even... Sorry, this is a point. I think it also very telling that they're taught to all write the same.
Yeah, the handwriting is even the same.
Because I always find that really, once again, really weird.
Yeah.
Because
But it's beautiful how they write.
Oh, it's beautiful. But I remember when I was at Animatrice over there, and I was like, but you can't tell
who's writing.
So in England, you know, often when you get a card in the post or a letter, by who's written on it, you're like, oh, that's so-and-so's writing, that's so-and-so's writing. I think that's really nice.
Whereas in France, they're still taught to write in cursive.
Yeah.
So it's very non-individualistic.
No.
It's very much, this is how you write. You can still tell a bit, people have slightly different ways, but it's, generally speaking, everyone writes the same way. And so I often think, I'm glad my children, I was lucky that they weren't neurodivergent in any way.
Yeah.
They didn't have any extra needs but being bilingual itself was a challenge, actually, with the French education system, because it's not built for that. It's really built for people who
are native French
speakers who really fit in the box of, like, they respect authority.
Yeah.
It's really that kind of thing.
We may not do great in our hospitals, as in we don't have our own rooms.
But I think England is definitely still more open to, like, more freedom of how you like to educate
and I think
your child.
We're much more modern about additional needs and things.
And because what I was also mentioning earlier to Emma was, I think as well, gender roles in France, in my region, my perspective, are a lot more old-fashioned than in the UK. Certainly when it's my husband that picks up my kids, or it's my husband that's watching them if one of them's ill, and I'll say, could you take the day off because I have something important to do at work or whatever. My colleagues, I wouldn't say they throw a parade in his honour, but I definitely hear, like, a lot of, like, oh, you're so lucky. Oh, that's so nice of him. What a great husband. Oh, it's so wonderful that... And I was just like, oh, no, like...
Yeah, it's good.
It's good, but it's the basics of being a dad. Like, there's nothing wonderful. Like, if I stayed off when my kids were ill, they're not going to throw me a parade.
No.
Because they were like, they said, oh, did you cook something, like, so he just can serve them the food? And I was like, no, he can cook. And they were like, oh, that's so nice. And I was just, like, when I'm alone with my children and I cook for them. Yes.
You can hear a little voice, somebody's come.
Hold on. What do you want?
So if Elliot keeps that in, he's asked just come to interrupt.
In all the groups that I signed my son up to, we gave them my number and my husband's number, and I'm the only one who's been added to any of the groups.
Well, I would say that is similar in England.
Except the only group they didn't add my number to was football. And I was like, how sexist. Not that I'm not that into football.
No.
But I would like to be part of the group, you know.
No,
so
I think that's a bit universal still here. I think we are slightly more modern, but there is definitely the thing of, we will always tell the mum first because they'll respond. And we expect them to respond quicker than the dad.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, I found that, I think it was just the reaction of my colleagues surprised me more, because I was like, we're all educated women. We all have jobs, you know? Like, why should it still fall to me to do the majority of it? And I do the majority. I do. Because I work slightly less. I still do the majority. But it was just the reaction annoyed me, because it's a few times now where I've had to say, like, oh, he's going to do this or he's going to do that. And they'd be like, oh, how wonderful. And I should be like, well, what? You're so lucky.
Oh, you're so lucky.
You're so lucky. And I'm like, yeah, but do you know what? It's kind of part of his job description.
Yeah, you chose to be a father.
Yeah. That's part of your job, is to do that. But anyway, so that's, I think, as well, is a big difference.
Hello, it's me again, Elliot, popping back into this episode. Didn't expect to hear my voice again, did you?
We did not.
Just to say, as you're probably aware, you know, our usual ad reel of saying our podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Kairos movement, which is part of the Methodist Church So, we're supported and have some funding through the church that way. You don't have to be part of the Methodist Church. You don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to believe in God. You can just enjoy listening to us chat about parenting. That's what we're here for. So we can share experiences and build a community together. Do stay tuned till the end of the episode to see how the craft has gone if you're watching along on YouTube with us, or do let us know your thoughts on what's being said between. I've no idea what's going on actually. I'm not here for a change. So whatever they're saying, it'd be great to hear your thoughts, and comment below on YouTube, or send us your thoughts on Instagram at don'twakethebaby_podcast. You find all the links in the description down below, or over on our webpage, which is www.kairosmovement.org.uk/don'twakethebaby.
What else would you say is a big difference between...
Everybody in Nassim's class can see their marks.
Oh, yeah. This is weird.
I think England are a lot more mental health aware.
Yeah, I think most things. I think that's interesting.
I remember all the conversations we've had before, and what really shocked me, I was like, you could not do that in England.
Yeah, so the child in question is only 6.
Yeah.
And they already have an evaluation, so different evaluations to see where they are compared to other children or other schools. And they know each other's results.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate that he's always fine, he's not struggling. But honestly, it sounds like I'm being dramatic, but some of it seems archaic.
Yeah.
So, you have to learn a poem, recite a poem in front of the class. And of course, some children won't be able to do that for whatever reason.
Well, even your child fits in most boxes, but he's quite shy.
Yeah.
So for him, reading a poem in front of a class
it's not reading, reciting.
That's remembering. Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
It can be a lot of pressure. And if you can't do it, you still have to stand up and just say nothing.
That's terrible.
It's really...
That sounds like a trauma dream.
Yeah.
Like your worst nightmare at school, you stand up and you don't know what you're going to say.
Not to criticise the whole of the French education system, but I think a lot of things... I'm actually very happy with his education in France so far, because I think certainly in certain areas, to do with art, to do with cinema...
Oh yeah, when I was an animatrice, I was really impressed by how much they taught about art.
Even cooking, they cook, they learn about what foods are good, what foods are bad.
Also, they learn about their own culture. So it's not this is a famous French artist. This is what he did, and from a very young age, that's just very normal.
This is a big part of them starting school so early, is so that they... I don't know how to explain that. It's very much about cultural integration and everyone having a similar upbringing, really.
Which once again
not individualistic.
a little bit weird.
Not saying they're making French robots, but
but it's nice that they teach them about that culture.
Yeah, and so there's lots of things. I learned a lot about France from my son, even though I've lived there for a long time, because he'll come back with project after project about this, that.
And I can't say, because we don't have a child at school yet, but from my experience, which obviously was quite a while ago now, we'd often learn history and stuff, but I wouldn't say it was culture. We didn't learn, this is a famous English artist, or this is English...
certainly not at that age. I think that was much later.
That's what I mean. It wasn't... that was never... So I think a lot of us don't grow up with that same sense of...
Yeah, because there's lots of things where I've been like, is that too advanced for him? And actually he's really enjoyed it, and he has learned a lot. So that part of it I really like, and I would say it's not that I hate, I do like his school, certainly I'm happy with, and I like the education system.
And you're very good that you do challenge them, actually.
Yeah, if I don't like something, I definitely will challenge
Becky's outspoken. I think because you're from, that is kind of your job.
Yeah, so I should say prior to working in creches, I did work in primary schools in France as a teacher. So I'm happy with the education experience because I feel like I can challenge what I don't like.
You feel like you know enough to
I know the world of education. I've worked in it, so I don't feel like I'm just making up nonsense, and I can say to them, look, this is my experience. And
I think it'd just be hard for people who aren't as confident as you.
And I think as well, I think I probably have the label as like the interfering English
problematic.
Mom. Problematic. Like she doesn't take criticism like a French person where she just takes it. She's more like, well, actually...
actually I think this is a better way of doing this.
But his current teacher actually really appreciates that because we discuss things and she's like, well, it's, valuable to learn from different experiences actually.
And you're never, I've never been there, but you're not a mean person about these things. You're quite
I'm always very
respectful
about things. Yeah. I think, when I was explaining before, I think France is still very, very much the carrot. The sticker, not the carrot.
Yes.
I think English education is very much like, well done, that's fantastic. You can improve with this. And France is very like, even if you've done well, it's very much like, well, you could improve on this, this, and this.
Yeah. I think it seems more competitive as well because you know other people's scores.
Do you remember when Nassim was like, he was 2.5 and I got a note that his what did it say on his colouring?
Oh, yeah.
It said something along the lines of like, must colour within the lines or something
He
like
had
that.
a really big thing about this as well. This is like something that really affected him because I remember he came over and he was colouring and he told me his colouring was no good because he'd gone over the line and I was going, no, it's fine, don't worry.
Even if it went over a tiny bit, he would be upset.
And then he'd be like, well, no, throw it away. And I'd be like, no, it's perfect. And he was like, no, I've gone over a line. And I was like, I remember at the time I said to Becky, he's really becoming a perfectionist. And she was going, that's what they've done to him.
Because I remember he was 2.5 and they said like, attention, and I was like, that it was written like on one of his drawings. And I remember being like, wow, it's like he's 2.5. He's only just picked up a pencil. Like, give him time to draw
right now,
within lines.
Lily's only just 2 and she loves drawing and colouring.
But I don't know, I'd like that could have been...
There's no way she could be
that could have been a particularly pedantic teacher, but it's just...
I think you're saying overall the whole culture is slightly more old-fashioned.
Yeah, I think it's slightly more, and it's slightly more critical, I would say, in terms of... I think it's slightly less like...
I think definitely over here as well...
I think Anglophone culture is very much to do with...
individuality.
Yeah, and almost like reward-based learning.
And it's kind of run your own race.
Yeah, it's
over
very much run your own
we're very
race.
you don't have to be the same as this person. We all get taught, we all have our own strengths.
Like Nassim School does Student of the Week. And it's based on it's not based on in England it's based on
we have this, but it's based
behaviour.
on this was a kind thing to do. This was
they have one that's based on behaviour and one that's based on how well you've done with schoolwork. And of course Nassim at one point every single week he won this award. And I thought, how demotivating for other children.
But also then he had a lot of pressure. He wanted to win it every week.
And then he put pressure on himself. I have to always be this best student of the week. And I'd be like, you can't always be...
You can't always be the best.
So, I don't know how it's going to edit this together. There's just too much that's been discussed. But basically, I think some things are worse, some things are better, of course. But I think, generally speaking, less individualistic.
Yeah.
And more, I guess, more artistic, cultural kind of exposure.
I think they do have a lot of positives in that regard. Once again, though, my child isn't at primary school.
So we'll see. We can rediscuss this when Lily starts school.
Yeah, when it starts school. Re-come to it because...
Rehash it, because maybe you'll find that certain things are different, certain things are the same. But I know a lot of mums that I've spoken to who are from America and England have found it hard to adjust to the education system in France, because to them it felt...
I'm not saying also that the English system's perfect. I actually already have a lot of problems with it.
Yes, But I just, from my experience, so that's to say, I think you can criticise and you can say, well, I don't like this, I like that. Some people might be the opposite. Yeah. They say, I like that.
Is it the same in France? So in England, I feel like once you hit secondary school, so this isn't a problem in primary school, you're almost just taught for tests. And I don't think you're really taught things to learn them. It's more like you're taught this, you pass this test, and you're taught this, you pass this test.
It's no longer my experience either, because I've only taught in primary schools and younger.
So I don't know. Well, that'll be another topic
But
to
I would
pick up
say Nassim already is tested twice a year.
So it's already quite a lot.
So I think it probably is going to continue like that. I wouldn't imagine there would be less.
It's just
testing.
I have a problem with only learning things for a test. I think if you're going to be taught it,
I think this is what is interesting when they do
do
culture. Well, I'm just going to talk about my child's school. I would say, because they also do fencing, horse riding,
very good,
swimming. So they do a lot of things that are within school time that are really, really good as well. So I would say that's
Yeah, I don't think you get
definitely
that
a positive.
at a normal
I don't
school
think
here.
you get that in a public school in England.
You get swimming normally,
but like fencing and horse riding. I suppose maybe, but it's
well, no, only at private school you get fencing and horse riding.
I know, like that depends on the school in France, but I have a few friends whose kids have had similar activities at school, so definitely in some regards.
And they're good in that they get like Wednesdays off, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, I forgot about that. That's interesting.
That's a big difference.
Wednesdays. So children in France don't go to school on Wednesdays because Wednesdays are for
basically extracurricular.
So like some kind of sport you want to do, some kind of music you want to do, basically anything outside of the kind of more traditional.
So that's when very modern. I like that idea.
But that's always been like that.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because that's been there for a very long time. It's been like that, and in some way it's a pain for me because I work on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
So I have to kind of deal with... So if you're working, they go to like a
Wednesday
school club, but they're not doing school work. They're like
doing games
or
and
games
things,
or whatever. So that's true. I've forgotten about that. Yeah, that's very different, I suppose, than England. But that also kind of promotes how they're very, very much into health. Compared to the UK, I think it's very, very promoted.
Think in the UK, we talk a lot about health, but we don't actually do much.
I think they try, but I think there's just not the funding's not in the right place, and you have to kind of overhaul the whole system surrounding health.
I think the government often does like adverts about eating well, and I'm like, well, what we really need to do make it affordable.
So I would say in France, anything that is pre-prepared is very expensive.
This is a huge difference. Becky gets very jealous.
Yeah. So I even like I suppose Lidl stuff is kind of cheap, but you have the most like it's much cheaper to buy. I was explaining to Emma, so we go to a local farm and we
pick your own.
Thank you, that's the word. I was trying to think of the word. Pick your own fruits and veggies and all that. And that is cheaper for us than going to a supermarket. And Emma was saying she thinks in England that would be...
It would be the opposite.
The opposite would be more expensive.
Because I really try. I used to get like deliveries to my home of like local produce, but it was so expensive.
And I would say also in France, of course, that depends on your area. We're lucky we have a place close by. But I would say, generally speaking, what you pay for anything that's kind of bad for your health is taxed slightly more. Except wine, for some reason. But generally speaking. And so I think you just automatically eat healthier because it makes more sense. Yeah. It makes more sense budget-wise.
When I remember we were talking at one point, she was making a pie and I was making pie. We were making the same pie in different countries. And
she's very fun like that.
She said, we live a really exciting life. She was like, oh, how are you making the pastry gluten-free? And I've just bought some pre-made. And you've brought pre-made gluten-free pastry? I was like, yeah. And she was like, that doesn't exist.
Yeah, gluten-free wouldn't exist. No, no, that wouldn't
She was like, I have to make my own pastry. I was like, oh. And then she was going, oh, what are you doing for the filling? I was like, it's out of a tin. Like, there's a lot of stuff in England that they help you cook. Like, it's already provided.
Well, that's what my husband, Ivy, always says. You don't actually cook in England, do you? It's just like, you open a tin, you throw it in an oven, or you throw it in a pan.
Well, I tell you what, it's very handy.
Yeah,
it's just not as cost effective.
It's just not as cost effective, yeah.
Whereas tin stuff over here is very cheap.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I never cook from... Well, let's be honest. I never cook from scratch in the same way you do.
And I think that goes into, like, raising your children as well. You're a lot more health conscious. Like, I think our paediatrician really grills us about what our children eat, which I think in England they wouldn't do as much.
Well, I'll wait till my health visitor next comes to see Lily.
Yeah.
But they haven't really...
Because I think
they've just been like... Do they eat some fruit and veg?
Yeah, exactly. Whereas I always go like, what do they eat normally for breakfast? How much meat do they eat a week? How much fish do they eat a week? How many...
Well, I'll tell you what, it could be a bad week if Lily's had a bad time.
Yeah, because often they're very much like something you should... On an evening, it should be soup, preferably like vegetables, something very light.
The French system is good in that they have like quite luxurious breakfasts. That is what you should do.
Yeah, but I think it's just... You're very educated. Even so, like, I... definitely didn't come from that education because I'm English. I do eat a lot of meat, and it was only after my first born was like being followed by a paediatrician that they kind of really were like, well, this is kind of what they should be eat. Well, what the in France what we're told we should be eating, and we try to follow it generally speaking. So I think
you eat more fish.
Yeah, I think we definitely eat more fish, and I think Well, I cook a lot, basically, is what I do. I think we eat very little processed stuff, generally speaking. How is this about child reading? I don't know. It's to do with the round.
And it's a difference.
It's the difference. I think as well, when you're a parent yourself, you're like, I've been through that. And I've come out the other side and it's okay.
Yeah.
You know what? You survive it. And I think it's easy for people to say, oh, well, my kid never did that. My kid never did this. Well, it's easy to say that, but it doesn't mean that what you're going through is abnormal.
Oh, and everybody's had similar experiences. Yeah. I think you just need to find that same
and I think
thing.
If people have older kids, like I think 8+, and they're telling you their kid never did X, Y, and Z, they don't remember. Because I started to remember a lot of the things my eldest did when my youngest was born. Yeah. Which I'd forgotten about. And I'd kind of started to imagine in my head that he'd been the perfect child. Yeah. And now he was very, very good, but it started to come back to me. Yeah. Exactly how he behaved, and I was like, oh no. I think it's any of the differences we really have to mention.
No, I think we've covered most of it. I mean, people are probably messaging in the comments like, you haven't mentioned this really clear difference.
Or it's like you have your opinion is nonsense. That's not my nonsense at all. But I was going to that just made me think of how much he's been affected by living in France. Though I was saying to him, I'm sure ages ago, that when we went to visit my husband's family in Morocco, and we went to a huge market, there's loads of people, and he went, "Oh, mummy, is it a manif?" Which is the word like a protest. Is it a protest? And it really made me laugh because for him, automatically, there's lots of people. It must be a protest. It must be a protest. And I was like, oh no, darling, it's just a market. Just a market. But his whole way of viewing life.
Actually, it's becoming more commonplace here at the minute to have strikes.
Yeah, but I suppose because in France it's so common.
Well, yes. Whereas now in England it's very newsworthy still. Yeah. But it is becoming like there's been a lot of train strikes. There's been a lot.
Yeah,
of strikes
it's definitely
recently.
become more of that. I just think in France it's such a cultural thing. Like even.
Yes, I would say in France they're a little bit too into their strikes. Yeah. And they strike over very little things.
And even he started to say to me stuff like, if I'm not happy about something, you should protest. I'm like, I don't feel that strongly about it.
Yes, I'm not that annoyed.
But anyway, how do you usually wrap up this?
Hello? Oh, that's how we're going to end the podcast. There's going to be a little friend here.
Should we go dodo? No? What are you going to do instead?
Are you going to do a podcast with Auntie Emma? What is it? Is it a microphone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Microphone.
Microphone, good word.
Look, yeah.
This.
Do you want to sing?
Yeah.
That's it. We've come to the end of this special episode with guest Becky, and I hope you've had a good time listening. I've no idea what's happened. I haven't been here. I'm going to listen back. I want to know.
Yeah.
I would say it's good to be with you, but Emma's been with you.
I've been with you. I've enjoyed your company.
Yeah, there we go. Do join our community over on Facebook and share with other listeners. You can connect with us personally and other mums and dads around Yorkshire where we're based and beyond. You can find the links to that on the webpage and down below in the show notes, all those places. We'd appreciate it if you like and share and subscribe and download or, all the buttons, comment, those things that make the algorithms work. That stuff's all good. Particularly, though, if you have other parent friends who you think might enjoy this show, we'd love you to recommend it if you're having a good time. If you're not, tough.
Leave.
Or let us know what you don't like. As usual, we're trailing off into the distance as we come to the end. Come back next time, please, and we'll be chatting about something else.
Yeah. Who knows what?
Yeah.
How prepared we are.
We haven't decided yet. This is such a polished show. Hope you're enjoying the great professionalism here.
Yeah.
Goodbye, sleep well, and remember...
Don't wake the baby.
Don't wake the baby.